Lucy, can I please ask you to come up and tell your story about Berrima? Thank you. Hello everyone. I'm going to ask Jo Kennedy to come up and talk with me. She's our the coordinator of our Stephanie Alexander program. And Mabel Chalmers too, who's going to give you an idea of what it's like from the children's perspective. This is Mabel. Jo and I haven't prepared anything to say. We weren't sure what was going to be covered and we didn't want to reiterate things. So perhaps we'll just tell you a little bit about the sort of basic story of our garden. We have been going a little more than 18 months, and about 6 months after we had started gardening, we won the Stephanie Alexander grant, which just sort of gave us this massive injection of energy, and we are still waiting for our kitchen. So our program at the moment is a little unbalanced in that we are producing a lot of beautiful food. A lot of it is getting eaten in each lesson, but it's all raw. And occasionally we do sort of drag pot bellies outside and all sorts of other equipment. So the children have been cooking, but not as they should be each week. So we have a wonderful kitchen coming along. It's specially designed. We're an unusual school in that we didn't have any kind of space that we could refurbish and turn into a kitchen, so we're starting from scratch, which is an extra challenge. But I was employed at the beginning of this year as the garden teacher. Up until then I'd been volunteering, and we have about 6 other volunteers that work many hours in the garden each week as well. I don't really know what to say except that I absolutely love this job. Jo is a fantastic colleague, and so is Tim Ryan. I feel like I'm really well supported. I see joy on the children's faces, and I see lots of eating, and it's a pleasure to be there. So Jo, do you want to say something?
Well, we might let Mabel speak and then see if there's any queries.
It's Monday morning and you might imagine that the big kids aren't real keen about starting the school week, but at Berrima Public, garden class is on Monday morning and it's the favourite time of the week for almost all of us. Grab hats, sunscreen on, tear up to meet at the old bell. Lucy gives us the rundown on what we will be doing. We get into our groups, collect the tools or materials and head off with our volunteer to get started. Today we are repairing new beds, planting out winter seedlings, cutting the strawberry runners, doing some harvesting. There is plenty of harvesting straight into our mouths. Wrap a basil leaf around the tiny tomato, pluck the small beans, they're the best. And if you look hard, there are still a few strawberries hiding deep in the bushes. Other days we learn about beneficial insects or green manure or the pH of soil. We might be identifying herbs by smell, talking about the seasons and planting plans, or how to get along in our groups, learning how to use tools safely, sketching the parts of a plant, or writing about how we might transform a part of our grounds. The 45 minutes just fly by. Alistair finds it hard to sit to learn, but in garden class he doesn't need to. Tate likes to do the hard work jobs. He's really good with the shovel. Telia is scared of trying new things, but one day Mr. Mudd, yes, this actually is one of our volunteers' names, convinced her to try using the electric drill to help build the beam supports, and then no one else would even get a go. Neve is our keen nature lover, which is great, but she keeps trying to rescue snails from the squashing pile. Since we started our garden lessons, every one of us has tried doing something we haven't done before. Every one of us has tasted something we've never eaten before. Every one of us has learnt something new or come to understand something better by doing it. 2 years ago, when I was in Year 4, we had a couple of small treated pine veggie beds that the weeds were trying to take over. Now, thanks to Lucy, our principal, and lots of wonderful parents and volunteers, the Stephanie Alexander Kitchen Foundation, we have a huge, beautiful and productive garden that is giving us so much more than vegetables, herbs and flowers. It's fresh, delicious and a fun way for us to learn together. Thank you.
all I can say is it's been quite a difficult journey to get to where we are, and we've still got a little way to go, but it's been so worth it. Sometimes you bite off more than you can chew. This is definitely one of those occasions. But seeing the children come to the garden each week and just be so inspired by it and so joyful about coming up the path to the garden and talking about it after class and finding carrot tops and experiences like a child coming to me when I'm on playground duty, opening up their white bread sandwich, showing me a piece of plastic cheese and saying, "Do you think I could get some lettuce from the garden?" That's when you know that it's really transforming, and it makes it so worth the effort that we've put in and we've yet to do so. Thank you.
I'd just like to thank Michael and Joyce too, because their support has been extraordinary. They've donated an enormous number of tools. They've been on the end of the phone, they've visited us, and most fundamentally their farming methods have inspired me and give me the ability to make that garden what it is. So, thank you.
Can I please ask Mount Majura to come and tell their story and invite the children up? Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Mabel. That was a very succinct description of our garden too. What job well done. My name's Coralie, I'm the principal at Majura Primary School, and I'd like to introduce Eva in Year 5, Sophie in Year 5 and Sage in Year 2. I will...
3.
In Year 3, I apologise, you are. I got that wrong. I will acknowledge the Ngunnawal people as the traditional custodians of the land upon which we're meeting today and the land upon which Majura Primary School is built. The program was launched at Majura a year ago, last March, and it has a very high degree of community support at Majura. Majura is a government primary school in Watson in North Canberra and has about 450 students. The application for the program was really generated by a group of parents who swept me along with their enthusiasm, but put in a lot of the hard work to apply to be the demonstration school of the ACT. Without that support, it would be a very lonely job to do it sort of on your own, and so I acknowledge that support being critical in getting the demonstration school status for Majura. But what that successful application brought for us was the funding to turn an old community room and set of toilets into a kitchen and a dining space, and enable us to enclose a courtyard and turn that into a beautiful vegetable garden. That courtyard is right near the Watson Shops, which is a very busy suburban shopping centre, and so it's really promoted to the broader community what we're trying to achieve at Majura Primary School. The other really lovely thing about our community is that there's a lot of community members who did have children at the school, who no longer have children at the school, but who still see that school as an important part of their community, and we're able to tap into their expertise and their interest and their energy in volunteering for this program, either in the kitchen or the garden. So we still see ourselves as very new to this, and we've had some bumps along the way. We recently lost our fantastic kitchen specialist, but we're very excited about just recruiting a new kitchen specialist. So kitchen classes have been suspended while we're getting those staffing issues sorted out. But like was previously spoken, the children absolutely love the program. It's a real highlight of their week, and I've asked them each to be able to say what is their favourite part of the program and why. So Sage, who is in grade 3, what is your favourite part of the program and why?
I like the kitchen because it's because once you finish cooking, you get to eat all the lovely food that you've made. And my first kitchen class was a bit of an extra one, and we made it was in Year 2, and we made a hamburger, and we all had different groups, and they're all different colours, and they had them along the benches. So there was a red one, a green one, a blue one, and a yellow one, I think they were. And at the tables, when we were tasting them, they were so good that we had to have seconds.
Eva, can you tell us what is your favourite part of the program and why?
My favourite part is the kitchen. I like to mix the food with my hands because it feels really nice, and I love eating because it's just yummy.
And Sophie had a bit of a dilemma when I asked her favourite part of the program. Can you explain?
When I was in kindergarten, I wouldn't even thought of having the kitchen garden specialist, but thanks to Stephanie Alexander, we got it last 2 years ago. When we had our first kitchen class, I thought, oh god, this is going to be a bore. And then we made this, I can't remember what it was, but this delicious meal, and I just went, this isn't boring. In the end, I became friends with all the people in my group, and once I threw a spinach leaf at one of my friends, and she said, this is yummy, and ate it, which I thought was quite funny. So that was my favourite.
So you can see there's lots of learning that goes on behind the original aims of the lessons, I'm sure. But as was already shared, the children really, really enjoy the program, and it's got a very high degree of community support at Majura. And like I said, we still see ourselves in our infancy, but we're very excited about what it's become. So thank you for letting us share our story.
Janet, and thank you for inviting me too, and what an amazingly good roll-up. It's fantastic to see so many enthusiastic people, and I've heard some great stories already, not least, of course, from the children themselves. Thank you also to Michael and Joyce. I really enjoyed listening to you, and you've stolen half the speech, but that's the way of it in these sort of events. Many of us have the same message to give. So I wanted to talk I wanted to say that about my own childhood. I do think it's really very relevant that I grew up in a food-loving family, and it was quite different to the families of many of my contemporaries. Food was incredibly important. My mother was a wonderful cook. She wasn't just an interested cook. She really loved food as an expression of culture, and she hadn't travelled at that time, not much. So she read about food, and when she cooked these lovely things, much of which had come from the garden, she would always make a little speech as she put the food on the table and say, this cabbage cooked with caraway seed is because my friend from Hungary says that's the way they cook cabbage. There would always be a sense that the food had a context, it had a story behind it. So we always had special dishes. Everybody had their favourite. The Gugelhof became the family birthday cake, and so on and so on. And she, of course, taught me to cook from a very early age. She not only taught me how to cook, but she taught me why certain things went with certain things, or why it was a good idea to think about things in combination. She also taught, I'm one of 4 children in the family, she taught us all how to grow things, and we were encouraged to pick and bring things from the garden and the orchard, or duck eggs or whatever, and bring them into the kitchen, so that we, just without anyone making any speeches, we always understood the relationship between care in the garden and deliciousness on the plate. She always also stressed that there was never just one way of doing things, and I think that one was a very important one, that there was always another way you could have put it together, or another technique that might have been relevant. And we all grew up helping, scraping bowls, licking wooden spoons, peeling apples, etc., etc. Conversation flourished. We had a round table. My grandfather lived with us for 25 years. There were many arguments, and I think I'd have to say that a discussion of how to prepare sauerkraut, or what had gone into the filling of a pie, was always considered a topic at least as worthy of note as the politics of the day. And it's probably not surprising that my whole working life has been entwined with food. Cooking it in restaurants, teaching about cooking, writing about it, and now teaching again, particularly about the relationship between growing lovely food, picking it at its perfect moment, and cooking it simply in order to give pleasure to those I love. And I must say, in the 30 plus years that I spent in restaurants, I was involved with many, many young people who had chosen hospitality as a career, and it was always intriguing to me how few of them had actually had a food-rich background in their own lives. That just was interesting. And as I have got older, and I've looked around me a little bit more, perhaps since I've left the restaurant, had a little bit more time to lift my eyes, and I've become more and more interested in what was happening with food and eating in families, and particularly how it was affecting young children. And it seemed to me that a knowledge of what was seasonally available, or of how easy it is to prepare simple dishes of healthy fresh food, was disappearing. We invited the then Victorian Minister of Education to visit Collingwood College. She was genuinely amazed by what she saw. The children took her on a tour of the garden. They pointed out the kohlrabi and the fennel. They then led her into the kitchen, and they all sat down and ate lunch together and talked beautifully about what the dishes on the table. So the Minister for Education then went to Treasury, and some money was allotted in the state of Victoria. By 2004, Victoria had led the way, and there are currently over 50 schools in the kitchen garden family in that state. They range from tiny schools such as Tambo Upper in East Gippsland, Flinders Island, which of course is technically Tasmania, a cluster of even smaller schools in the King Valley, to very large suburban schools. That initial expansion would never have been possible without the supportive partnership of the last Victorian government, whose financial assistance provided the assistance with infrastructure costs, and it also provided part of the specialist salaries. As many of you will know, the government has recently changed, but we are hopeful that a bipartisan policy will prevail and that the new government will understand how important it is to support this enjoyable program. So Victoria's initiative and success led to it coming to the attention of the Department of Health and Ageing. We are blessed and thrilled at the support we have had from this department. Our program would never have expanded without their support. We received a significant offer of funding over 4 years. The promise was, or the offer was, infrastructure funding for up to 190 schools over 4 years. We are currently in the final stage of that funding, and I want today to stress that the last round of grants will open on May the 3rd, and I want lots and lots of schools to apply for that funding on May the 3rd, because I believe that we need to demonstrate absolutely that there's a huge demand for this program, and we already have quite a lot of expressions of interest for these grants. So that funding enabled us to extend the program to all Australian states and territories. As I said earlier to Michael, we have 180 projects currently, some are quite new. Many of them have now been going for nearly 2.5 to 3 years. I visit schools as often as I can, and it never fails to blow my mind, because without exception you're greeted by hugely enthusiastic, smiling children. It is said over and over again, said again today by some of the children, but it is generally by the children regarded as their favourite time at school for the week. The children themselves are the very best ambassadors for the program. And then we hear so many stories from the parents of those children, who talk to us about how it's changed behaviour of those children. How they go home and they ask if they can make the same things they made at school. They go home and they make little gardens. They talk. They ring up their grandparents and they say, today we did this, that and the other. The trickle-down effect is really quite interesting. Anyone here representing a school or part of a community of a primary school that does not have this program, I would urge you to get onto our website, kitchengardenfoundation.org.au, where we've outlined in great detail how you apply for a grant. So I won't go on about that. Our schools do range from the large, the small, the remote. I'm going to visit a school I haven't visited before the week after next at Cooperapeedy. We have a school in the Pilbara. We've got a school at Burke. We've got schools in Cairns West, recently flooded. But we've got a great sprinkling all around the country, and it is so exciting. And when you see what's happened here with Berrima and Majura, if you can imagine that 180 times over, with every school with its own particular challenges, its own particular spaces, it's just an amazingly exciting thing for me to know. We believe that currently, as of today, we are influencing more than 22,500 children every week around Australia, which is impressive. But I always need to smack myself down then immediately by saying that's 180 schools and there are 7,800 primary schools in Australia. So we do have a little way to go. I think one of the strengths of the program, and that's also been alluded to by others, is the way in which it requires schools to reach out to their wider community, to make new friendships and to welcome new faces into the school as volunteers or as workers at working bees. So many principals have said to us, this has been the best way, this is the best thing that's ever happened in this school as far as the school working with community. And that is a great thing for a school to develop this sort of wider family. The stories are absolutely legion of local businesses, local TAFE colleges, local tradesmen, enterprising individuals, all helping and all becoming supporters of what the school hopes to achieve. And every one of those people, every volunteer, every tradesman, every educator becomes an ambassador for the school and for the program and makes the kitchen garden movement a little bit stronger. It's impossible to exaggerate the pleasure that this program brings to the students. It engages children with special needs. Parents report increased enthusiasm for new foods. Gardens are being built at home. We often tell the story of Farmer Jack. We put it on our website. A little boy of 9 who lives in goes to a remote school in the Mallee, completely removed from community assistance, who set up his own garden and wrote us a story to tell of the computer program he'd devised to record his crops. And his mother also wrote and told us of her astonishment at his dedication and how he'd rigged up a little bird scarer that was connected to a piece of string in the kitchen, and he expected his mother to stand there most days whilst he was at school and pull this string to scare the birds away from his crops. And she also finished her letter by saying one very hot night in the summer, it's in the middle of the Mallee, she said with a sigh, "Oh, I don't know what I'm going to cook this evening or for tea or something." And Jack said, "Don't worry, Mum, I'll whip something up." So we think that's lovely. And other children who sort of chastise their mother and say things like, "I meant real basil, Mum." You can't chop with a knife like that. Schools send us pictures of students learning how to clip the wings of their chickens, or of the latest scarecrow or garden sculpture, or of a hothouse made from recycled plastic water bottles, or a giant watering can pump operated by a child turning the wheels on a stationary bike. They send us recipes, they send us details of dinners they've organised where they've linked perhaps with a local chef. And so it goes on. It is endless and it is wonderful and it is inspiring. But there's always a serious side, and the evaluation of Victorian schools, which was conducted by Melbourne University and released last year, convincingly showed that in schools with the program compared to a control group, the children were willing to try new foods, and consistently they voted the kitchen garden class as their favourite time at school. It also showed how strongly community was brought into the school. That was its third major finding. The new national curriculum stresses the importance of students developing what is called general capabilities, including teamwork, creativity, intercultural understanding and ethical behaviour. What happens in the kitchen and in the garden covers all of this and more. Our students develop deep understanding of the environmental meaning of sustainability. On a weekly basis, they practice caring for a piece of land, creating compost and worm farms. They save seeds. They recycle materials to create structures to support growing plants. They measure and install drip irrigation systems. They discuss the use of chemicals and how this will affect soil and insect life. They spread mulch to reduce the need for watering over the long summer holidays. They build chook sheds and they care for these animals. They collect the food scraps, not just from the kitchen, but introduce programs throughout the school and add them to the compost. Well, the children also, in response to something that Michael was saying about sensible use of equipment, children all have to get a wheelbarrow licence before they're allowed loose in the garden with a wheelbarrow, and how they carry tools in a wheelbarrow. They also have to have a certificate in knife safety, which they get very quickly, and they of course use proper chef's knives. Another meaning of sustainability questions whether such a program can be ongoing in a school. My answer is that once a school has experienced it, it will not let it go. It is too rich educationally. Part of the training that we offer involves the classroom teachers, aimed at showing teachers how they can use the learnings and the understandings that flow from the students' work to enliven and expand the regular curriculum. As a foundation, we have a curriculum section which is actually fully occupied designing and writing activities and curriculum units of work for use in the classroom. The pizza party unit, for instance, is all about fractions, and they actually end up making a pizza and of course eating it eventually, but it's to do with percentages, fractions. It's a wonderful way of learning it. Students write reports about what they do. They write poetry. They're also learning to read technical language by reading recipes and seed packets. They're estimating, they're measuring. They paint pictures in the garden. They crush recycled crockery to make mosaic paths. They fire ceramic tiles hand-painted with herbs and vegetables to create splashbacks in their kitchens. They build wood-fired brick pizza ovens. They investigate ways of preserving food, from olives to marmalade. They learn the names of the foods in several languages. They create very special occasions for their parents and friends of the school. And finally, I wanted to say that our CEO, Ange Barry, who's not here today, but who's very good with figures, has worked out this amazing sum. With an average of 125 students participating in the program at each kitchen garden school, we estimate that the cost of delivering this education, by which I mean the cost of the specialist staff, that is the garden and the cook, the cost of delivering the education is $9 per child per week. Our current health budget, Australian health budget, is at around $48 billion apparently. There are approximately, it's a scary, these statistics, there are approximately 1.4 million children aged 8 to 11 in the Australian education system. It would cost $500 million per year to change the way all Australian children view and understand food and growing. Now that is a terrifying figure until you realise it's 1% of the health budget. We know that this movement towards health prevention programs in schools is global. News from the US and the EU tells us that this program can only get stronger. I think Australia is in a position where we could offer best practice know-how to the world. And I've said enough, and that's it. Thank you.